Great. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. We have two speakers with us this evening. We have Jessie Green, who is with the OSU TOPS program, and also Penny Soboleski. Am I saying that right, Penny? And she is with the BGSU Fly program. And so they're both going to share a little bit about those programs and how they're able to assist students with their post-secondary education who have disabilities. So we're going to start off with Jessie.
Perfect. Thanks. Glad to be here. This is the second SALT talk I've done this week. So I was with Montgomery County on Tuesday. So
very good.
Cool.
Welcome.
So feel free, thank you, to ask questions throughout. This is, I've kind of taken our normal big presentation and made it a lot smaller. So sometimes it's hard to pick and choose what information to keep in and what to not. So again, Jessie Green, I am the program manager of the TOPS program at Ohio State. And I'll go into a little bit of history first before I describe our program, because I think it helps to kind of situate where we are in Ohio with inclusive post-secondary ed for students with intellectual disabilities. So in 2008, funds were made available, the Higher Ed Act was authorized in 2008 and funds were made available in 2010 in the form of grants. In 2015, and Ohio State was able to win again. And what we chose to do with that in particular is start the Ohio Statewide Consortium, and what we call it the OSC. And we're just a collective group of institutions. We're up to 9 right now, who we bounce, much like this, bounce ideas off each other, get support for different things. And so that grant allowed us to grow. We were at 4 or 5 schools in 2015, and now we're up to 9. And so I don't have my nice little map in this presentation, but we've got schools, we've got Youngstown State, Kent State, Bowling Green, Firelands has a program, Toledo has a program, Sinclair Community College, University of Cincinnati, Columbus State, Ohio State, and Marietta College all have programs, and they're all just a little bit different based on the institution and the goals of the program. There was a third round of funding in 2020. No one in Ohio won, unfortunately, but we still continue on. One of the things that also the Higher Education Opportunity Act did was establish CTPs, or comprehensive transition programs. And what this does is allow students with intellectual disability to access some parts of federal financial aid. Oh, it's my next slide. Sorry. It allows the students that have not, maybe some schools are still graduating students with intellectual disabilities on a certificate of completion. A lot of students haven't had the requisite coursework for degree seeking programs in college settings. Many students are auditing their courses, which audited courses or non-degree students are not eligible for federal financial aid. And so this opened up the ability for students to be found eligible for the Pell Grant, work study, and the SEOG grant, Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. In Ohio, what that also did is we have the Ohio College Opportunity Grant, which is based on need from the FAFSA as well. And so these grants just make access to college more affordable, part of the way that we braid funding together for a lot of students. It also establishes satisfactory academic progress and how students meet that satisfactory academic progress. And that varies by institution, how they've set up their program. The last thing that the Higher Ed Act of 2008 did was establish Think College. If you have yet to check out this organization, It's our national coordinating center, and they do all the things. They work on public policy, they work on research, they are the national technical assistance arm for programs for students with intellectual disability in higher education. I recommend them to everybody because they really are leading the charge with the 300 plus programs that we have around the country. So it's just thinkcollege.net is the website, and I have it in my presentation. And then Whitney, I can make sure you have this if you want that. And so it's a great place for students to go. It's a great place for families to go, professionals. I use it regularly. So everybody has bits and pieces they can pull from the website. So when we look at the TOPS program at Ohio State, we've got 27 students currently in the program, most of them males. Our first years is our biggest cohort. There's a couple reasons for that. Most of our students are in-state, but they're not all local to Columbus. About half of those are local to Columbus and half are from outside the Columbus area. And then we have 3 out-of-state students as well that are in our program. And so we are a 2 or a 4-year workforce development certificate program. So that's non-degree, and that certificate is recognized by the university. And so that is something that has changed for us. It wasn't initially recognized by the university, but we went through the process to get that. So there's a little bit more oomph behind it. So how do they earn that certificate? Students are students at the university, and so they're following the semester calendar just like anyone else. Our students are enrolled in 4 credit hours, which amounts to 2 courses every semester. One is what we call an inclusive regular course. So that's a course out of the course catalog. It could be in any area. Students have taken over 150 different courses. And that's some of them we've repeated, but so there's a lot of options. And then we've got our program level courses, which are taught by our staff and really focus on career exploration and job readiness. They focus on independent living skills and all the things that you need to be an adult. It's a course that I regularly hear from folks that everybody needs to take. So, but this is a cohort-based course taught by our staff. So how do we support students? We have an academic advisor who helps students to sequence just like an academic advisor should do through their courses. She is also responsible for making sure students are getting accommodations. And then also because our students are auditing courses, they're able to modify the content of the course if we need to. And so, so that is what she's part of what she's responsible for, as well as she is the coordinator of all of our mentors. We work with about 50 to 70, depends on the semester, mentors that are undergraduate students at the university. And so she wrangles them. So one of the types of mentors that we work with are our educational coaches. And so those are individuals who go to that inclusive class with our students. They're there to help level the playing field. What that looks like is going to depend on the course and the student. So it could be note-taking. It could be helping the top student engage within a group project, so that the student understands what their role is within that project. It could be helping to read directions aloud, or anything really. We've had ed coaches who, for part of their role was to help students meet new people in the class. So just depending on what the goals of the student are, depends on how that ed coach supports the student. We also have a tutoring center. All of our tutors are, again, from that mentor cohort. Many of our students have taken a lot of the classes that our top students take, which makes that part nice because they know the content. They often know the professor, and so the expectations are known. And so students are assigned to the academic center I would say 3 to 5 hours a week in most cases. Depends on, again, on the student and the course that they're taking and what their need is for time in there. We can always add more. Students get their Buck ID. That is, part of the key to access at the university. It gives them access to the rec facilities, all the campus activities, student organizations and clubs, discounts at lots of different places. It gets them access to public transportation on an unlimited basis, so they can ride the COTA. Some of our students use that to get to the mall. Some of our students use that to get to work. Some of our students use it to get from their apartment to campus. It just depends on what they would need the city bus for. Students actively use email. So that's an area, if I've got teachers or professionals on here that can, and even parents thinking about this and thinking about IEP goals and the like, managing email, because you can't be at Ohio State without that. And so how do I respond? When do I respond? How do I start a new email and send an email? How do I manage the incoming emails that I have? Do I delete this? Do I save this for later? So that's an area that students are always showing growth in. So some of our students that don't live in the residence halls, and I'll talk about that in a moment, do get commuter student meal plans, not required, but for some of our students, they find that's the easiest way when they're on campus to get food. All of our students are required to complete a minimum of 25 hours of community service per semester. That happens in a variety of ways. There's an organization on campus, well, it's a department called Pay It Forward. And Pay It Forward is always sending out activities and opportunities for community service. And so our students participate in that. Some of our students have planned their own community service for themselves or for other folks or for other top students to participate. And then the 3 pictures on the screen, those are from service trips that have happened during spring break. So one of the trips was to Chicago, one to New Orleans, and one to Detroit. They did all sorts of different things on those trips. And so how do we support students in these areas? We have a social advisor who's also manages our housing and independent living pieces. And so we're always trying to connect students to new opportunities socially, whether that's working out or completing community service or attending a student org meeting. And so she helps students facilitate that when they need support. And then we have social coaches. Again, those mentors that are undergraduate students, they go to those things with students. So they might work out with a student. They might go to lunch with a student. They might go to a student organization event. They might come to community service or a TOPS event because they certainly don't want me at events with them. They want their peers there, which makes sense. And so it's a great way for students to get support in those activities. As far as living goes, we have had university housing for 2 years, which is Pennsylvania Place. We don't know what we'll have for housing next year. That can change yearly. And so we've got 8 beds in that residence hall, and it's worked out wonderfully. And then it took us a while to get into the residence halls at Ohio State. And so what we did a long time ago was partner with a local apartment complex, and they have worked with our families beautifully. They have lots of options, lots of amenities. You see the picture of the bus. They're a couple miles from campus, and so students hop on that bus. It's only open to residents, and that bus circles the apartment complex, comes to campus, circles it, goes back, and does that all day long. So our students are able to get to campus fairly easily. We also do travel training. So CABS is our campus area bus service. This is free for anyone, regardless of status with the university. And then CODA is the city bus that I mentioned. Both of these have accessible transit, so paratransit at OSU on campus, and then mainstream is CODA's version. We help students get access to all 4 of those options, depending on what individual needs are for a student. And we've also started doing travel training for students in rideshare like Uber or Lyft. So we help students get where they need to go or want to go. So then ultimately the goal of the TOPS program is community employment when a student graduates. And so how do we do this? We start with, in the first semester, a lot of career exploration and research and informational interviews and all the activities. And then in their second semester, they move into work experience. They're still gaining skills in career exploration and job readiness. But that's when they really, they start their internships, which in most cases they're unpaid. Sometimes we do have paid internships, but generally they end up sequencing as unpaid, moving into student employment. And then hopefully when they graduate, we work with them if they're staying in the area. To find employment in the community. If they're not staying in Columbus, we help connect them to DD and OOD, or we do have those out-of-state students, we'll connect them to the resources back at home. So we've got quite a few students that are graduates that have remained at Ohio State. So some of them are in just regular employment positions, but then we have some who, for instance, maybe 40-hour work week is not something that they have the stamina or endurance for, but they're capable of doing the job. So it's that general service assistant position is an approved position that we're able to rewrite the job description for any tasks at the university. And so, and it also allows us to take a full-time position and make it part-time if we have a graduate who that's what they need. So it's a very flexible position that has helped departments create positions that support our students. So we also have career specialists and job coaches on staff to support students. So that career specialist is working with them all the way through their program, sequencing those internships or work experiences, finding new opportunities within our community, communicating with the employers, maybe doing some training with the student and or the employer, and then we're fading as quickly as we can. And so students have been rather successful with that. And so I still forgot to update this slide. So we're at about 82% of our graduates are employed. So our numbers are a little bit better. And we have 41 graduates of the TOPS program. And they're working closer to 28 hours a week. And I believe that average wage is about the same. So well over minimum wage. You can see on the screen, we have a variety of locations that are a variety of places that folks are working. And that's because throughout this whole process of their time at Ohio State, we're really individualizing to what a student's interested in, what they need, as far as supports or what their strengths are as well. And this isn't everywhere, that's just a few. So how do we, come up with what that individual plan is? We do a person-centered planning meeting to identify what those goals are, what the student's strengths are, what their needs are for accommodations. And we review that at least annually so that students can be making steps towards graduation, but then also being as independent as possible upon graduation. So we have an orientation program right now. the status of it is unknown for the summer. Often what we've done is it's a 6-day residential orientation, but often we've opened it up to students who are in their last summer before they're going to graduate fully from high school. And so then they come, we do lots of assessments during this week, we write a report. It's great for families and IEP teams to embed some of the things that we've recommended into an IEP that might prepare a student for college. The piece we aren't sure about is if we have the residential space over the summer. OSU has not made a determination yet about that. And so if it is not residential, we would not open it up to folks that are still in high school. It would just be the student. It's required of students who are coming to the program in the fall. So college, it's expensive, and we recognize that it's expensive. And so we really work hard to braid funding together for families. We have some very gracious donors, and so we do have scholarships that we're able to award on an annual basis. We encourage all families, regardless of what their financial statuses might be, to apply for student federal aid. There's a lot of things that can trigger that to work. And so that's also how students access the OCOG, which is the Ohio College Opportunity Grant I mentioned earlier. Some of our students have 529 plans or stable accounts that they can use. Many of our students have gotten scholarships from outside entities, but by and large right now, our students are private paying for the program, or at least a portion of the program. And so when we look at the fee structure, our students are enrolled in 4 credit hours, which the number on the screen, the $2,100, is this year's cohort. And so fees are locked in for 6 years when you come in with a cohort. So that, coupled with, we do have a program fee for all of the wraparound services and supports we provide. So we're sitting right about $2,600 per semester, or I'm sorry, $7,600 per semester for the program. And that does not include housing. I can't speak to rates at University Village, but if a student were to live in the residence hall, it's another roughly $10,000 a year for residence hall. The current rate that our students pay, it depends on the residence hall that we're assigned to, but that current rate is almost $3,800. And then students would be required to have a meal plan if they're living in the residence hall, which is $2,000 to $2,500. And so that's why we're always looking at opportunities to increase the funding available to students. And so how do you get into TOPS? Well, we have an application process. There is a fillable form on our website. So we recommend that versus a hard copy paper. Our early action deadline every year is November 15th. This is where we prioritize students with intellectual disability. Now, that might not be what is the category on a student's IEP. It might be, but you might have an autism category, but still also have an intellectual disability. That is okay as well. And then February 1st is our regular decision deadline. And so that's where everybody else is entered into the pool as well if they apply and don't have an intellectual disability. So applications are reviewed, and then students do go through an interview process with us, and just to kind of work on that skill, but then also it's a good way for us to get to know the student to kind of start thinking about college, because college is very different than high school, and sometimes that's a very abstract process to think about. So here are some next steps. There's a free online training that I recommend to families to take to think about making that transition from high school to college. FAFSA opens on October 1st each year. So if you're thinking about 23, you could do it now. If you're thinking about 24, you would want to do it after October 1st of of this year. Submitting the program application, we have a blog. It's not the most active, but we're getting more active, and that way you can see there's bios on there, activities that our students are doing, research opportunities, all sorts of things. And then the last slide is just some great resources that we recommend. So.
Great, thank you so much, Jessie. That's a lot of great information. And if you would, I'll have you kind of send me those
Yep.
links and resources, and that way I can get those out to everyone here.
Absolutely.
On the call. Are there any questions for Jessie?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So if I have a severely visually impaired student, would he qualify under the regular deadline since he doesn't have an intellectual disability? I mean, should he go under that regular deadline?
He most likely would.
Okay.
So.
And the other question I had was, can someone who has graduated several years ago come into the TOPS program?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. The conversation when we have older students, I would say generally our students are in the 18 to 25-ish range typically.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, we have someone coming in next year that I think is 27, so things that does happen when we have older students. The conversation I'm having with the student and the family is centered around, is that student okay with working a lot with peers that might be 18 to 20 years old? Our mentors, most of them are in that traditional college age, which I can't even say that that's traditional anymore, but in that 18 to 22-year-old range. We've had some older students in the past that have provided me feedback that sometimes they didn't feel like they could connect as well because they were not much older, but older enough that they didn't feel like they had the same interests or, goals or whatever it might be. So that's the only conversation I have with families that have a student who's a little bit older.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much, Jessie, and you're welcome to stay on, or if you have to go, that's fine too. Next up is Penny, and she's going to share with us about the BGSU Fly program. So Penny, you're up.
Thank you so much, Miss Whitney, and thank you, Miss Jessie, for starting us off, because I think you kind of set a very nice tone for the differences between our programs. Let me just begin by saying my name is Penny Soboleski. I am one of the learning specialists assigned to the FLY program at BGSU, and FLY represents or stands for Falcon Learning Your Way. So our program is designed not for students with intellectual disabilities, but rather students who have learning differences in the areas of learning disabilities and or executive functioning skills, or for students who may not have an identified disability at all, but have a difference in that they want someone to stand beside them and support them through their academic journey. We do have a vision and mission statement, and essentially both of these capture the Heart of Fly program. We're an academic support program, and we are very individualized to each student. Each learning specialist meets with their students and develops a special and specific learning plan, and that's what we use. Not an IEP, but in some ways very similar, and it's what we use to guide our weekly meetings with the students. We really target a couple specific skills because, like the TOPS program, we're trying to prepare our students to go and develop the skills they'll need to be successful outside of the university in the workforce. So we target self-advocacy, self-efficacy. We talk a lot about proper communication, how to manage time, and things of that nature. It says here on the slide that we are exactly what I told you, except I haven't addressed the fact that we are selective. Our program and admissions seems very similar to the TOPS program in that we also require an interview. So we get to chat with our student to see if we're a good fit for them and they're a good fit for us. Because one of the major differences between our programs is that all of our students are degree-seeking students. They all take courses right out of the general course catalog, and there is no modification whatsoever to any of their academic rigor and or assignments. So our students are part of the general population, and so therefore we have to be selective because we keep our caseloads fairly small so that we can meet with our students as they need them. As you can see right here, what makes us unique is that our program is very individualized, and we spend a great deal of time, and we'll touch on this in a little bit, during our immersive orientation, getting to know our students. So the moment the semester begins, we're meeting with them, helping them to identify skills they currently possess, because we do one assessment during our orientation, and then we help them identify other skills that they're going to need to develop over time. And that really gives our students a leg up. It kind of, if you will, levels the playing field for them. Now, I'm sorry if I missed it, Miss Jessie, but just to give you a little background about our learning specialist, all of us have extensive experience working with students with learning differences. Whereas in some programs, we understand that that's not always possible. We're just very fortunate at BGSU to have qualified people as our learning specialist. We have several benefits to the program, and I'm going to go over those very quickly, but if you've got a question, please pop in, ask me to stop because I tend to speak pretty quickly. We do meet with our students every week. They meet with us on the same day at the same time for an hour. During that hour, we do a variety of checks, if you will, and we start by looking at their individualized learning plan. We ask them to open up their course shells. Right now, we use the learning management system called Canvas. You might be familiar with Schoology or Blackboard. We use Canvas. And what we do is look at their current courses, and we try to find areas where there might be obstacles to their learning so that we can target specific discussion and conversation around new strategies and using those strategies to build skills. Another thing we do is we help them develop their own tutoring plan. We have a peer tutoring program at BGSU. All of our peer tutors are trained, and we are CRLA qualified or accredited. So we have all been through training in that particular department of tutoring so that students, when they arrive to their tutoring, know that they're working with someone who has an understanding of the composition of what tutoring should look like and how it should be delivered, especially for students with learning differences. Our peer tutoring is given one-on-one for our students at no additional charge, and students can have tutors almost for every single general education course that they take during their first couple of years at the university. At BGSU, we don't call them general ed courses, we call them BGPs or Bowling Green Perspectives. We can almost always guarantee a one-on-one tutor for those courses. As they matriculate up into their junior and senior courses, it becomes a bit more difficult. But I will tell you, our tutoring coordinator and supervisor do a wonderful way of shaking the bushes to get tutors in for even the most difficult courses. In addition to course-based tutoring, we also have a writing center where students can receive one-on-one writing coaching every week. And we also offer them math coaching every week. So those are our course-based supports in the tutoring plan. And we do not force students to create a tutoring plan. We just strongly encourage them to do so, especially as they make that transition from high school to college. There's one other service that we provide through the tutoring program, and that is academic coaching. Again, a peer-led service, but this is where the academic coach can pick up and reinforce what we talk about in our meetings. So those coaches are trained in how to present students with a variety of study strategies, test-taking strategies, strategies to reduce anxiety in assessment environments, and even very well versed in time management techniques and strategies. So they really carry our meetings to the next level by meeting every week with the student. And again, those two options for tutoring and academic coaching are free to our students. We also have a bank of individual workshops that learning specialists provide to and with their students to address immediate needs or unique individual needs. So for instance, this week, I spent quite a bit of time modifying workshops to meet my students' level of anxiety mixed with the angst of going home for spring break, not understanding what that's going to look like. And so we take those workshops and modify them to meet our students' needs. We have workshops on sleep hygiene, on physical hygiene, on how to socialize, because I don't know about you all, but this is for the first time in my career that I've seen students arrive to the campus who spent most of their instructional time at home on a computer. So coming back into a social setting has been a bit disconcerting for some of our students. So we have incorporated different workshops to include not only that transition, but also even how to develop grit, how to push through when it's tough and you haven't had to rely on certain skills. So we provide those during our weekly meetings. If we see that there's a big trend, we will sometimes also provide small group trainings and workshops. As I mentioned earlier, one of our goals, if you will, is to help students become self-advocates. So we work on that. We do a lot of coaching. If you've heard the phrase, we have a guide on the side, that's similar to how we help students develop these skills. We also, at the beginning of every semester, ask students to develop 2 SMART goals, and that acronym is for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive. And we ask them to develop a goal academically as well as personally. And then we monitor that throughout the semester. Another thing we do is we communicate with parents via an email newsletter every month, kind of giving them an overview of the topics we've discussed in the past month. We also share important upcoming dates. And another feature of our newsletter, which has become quite popular actually, is where we share one of the workshops that we have presented to their students to give the parents and families and students I guess, common language, if you will, so that they can communicate. Because another one of our staple goals within the program is to help foster better communication between our students and their families as students are learning how to become young adults and parents are learning how to parent from a different perspective and in a different way. We are also very fortunate to have been assigned a personal research librarian coach. So all of our students can make appointments with her so they can get adequate academic resources for whichever class they're taking. She meets with them very close to where our offices are, another familiar place for our students. And she is willing and has in the past provided workshops. We have not done that this year because we are trying a different approach. We are trying the one-on-one to see if it's a bit more effective than using a small group workshop. So you'll have to tune in next year so I can let you know how well it worked. And finally, we are a great link for other campus resources. We have had the opportunity to create some very good open relationships with supporting services on campus. We work very closely with the counseling center, with the academic advisors on campus, because we are not academic advisors, we're learning specialists. So we will definitely help students make that connection. And if we don't know where they need to go, all of us are really pretty good researchers. So we turn stones until we find out what our students need, and then we help them make those connections. Now, I just want to give you an idea of what a weekly meeting looks like. And I will tell you, this is pretty generic, and it's not just unique to me, but it's unique to every student. I start off, usually when they come in the office, I ask them how they're doing, what have they been up to, because we only meet with our students in our offices. We do not meet with them in the dorm or in a coffee shop. Currently, we're only meeting in our office. So it takes them a couple minutes to get settled. Once they get settled, I'll ask them to take out their laptop, or they can use a computer that's on my desk. And we open that Canvas shell and we begin to look at all the current grades in every class. Now, it is not required that they open their shell to us. They don't have to do that. They're not forced to, but that's the only way we can provide honest feedback, is if we really know what's going on. And I will tell you, there are 2 students of mine whom I've never seen their Canvas shell. Yet, I believe we have a relationship where they honestly tell me what's going on. We look at their current assignments. How did they do? If they did poorly on the assignment, we try to troubleshoot to figure out what went wrong. Was it the way questions were worded? Was it a misunderstanding of instructions? Was it that they didn't properly plan enough time to complete it? Or, believe it or not, some of them still complete it and forget to turn it in college. I know that's hard to believe for our high school teachers, but they still do that in college. We also then take a look at their upcoming assignments to make sure that they have the resources they need, they have an understanding of the assignment, and then we start looking at obstacles. So at this time of the year, with our spring break just a week away, focus has been a challenge, as has motivation and grit. So we identify where those obstacles are in their courses, and then talk about strategies to overcome them. We also ask students about their class attendance and their tutoring attendance, because our program, like the TOPS program, is a pay-for program. We have an attendance rule. So students are only allowed to have a no-show for 2 tutoring sessions or 3 fly sessions before we bring them in and we reevaluate their commitment to those services. It also provides us with opportunities to prepare them for the responsibilities they'll need once they leave college. At the very, not at the very end, but toward the end of our meeting, I always ask them to look back over the previous week and identify 1 to 2 things that are worth noting. Sometimes that was a good grade. Other times it was consistently using their planner. And for one student, our goal is that she attend every class. And so the weeks that she does is a time of celebration for us, because that's been a real challenge for her. And then I will always ask them to push back from everything after we've helped them fill out their planner and guided them through that. Or if they are someone who uses the backward planning method, we walk them backwards from every due date. If they use block or chunk method, we help them chunk and block out their time to complete their assignments. But then they have to have one goal for the week, because many of our students have been diagnosed with ADD and or what we used to call ADHD, of both combined and separate diagnoses. So focus can be very hard for them to attend to. So we work on what can you focus on this week to move the needle. And then if there's time, because believe it or not, as fast as I talk, we still don't always have time in our hour-long meetings. We will review their progress toward their semester goals. And for many of our students, we've discovered this is the first time that they have implemented goal setting. So it has been a very good addition to our program. And then this is what we expect of both the learning specialist and the students. So as you're talking to your students who might have diagnosed disabilities, thinking about coming to BGSU to obtain a degree, let them know it's very much a reciprocal relationship between the learning specialist and the student. We both come knowing that attendance is important. We arrive prepared for our meetings. We make sure we have open and honest communication. There is nothing worse than having a student tell you that, yes, they've been going to class and doing all the work, only to find out, and this is a true story, just near the end of the semester, I had a student who had only spent 1 minute and 27 seconds in his class. So honesty was something we had to work on the next semester. We also use this time to share ideas and thoughts. We don't force them to do it our way. One of my overarching themes is I'm going to give you information because I want you to make an informed decision. I want you to learn how to think through problems, situations, choices, and decisions so that you can develop the skills you'll need out in the workforce. We both expect one another to bring forth our best effort, and it's definitely collaborative. We are not prescribing. We are collaborating on our progress forward and how we're going to meet the academic challenges of the semester. Some people have asked us if we support diversity and inclusion, and I know that you all understand that we do, but I just wanted to assure you that we take everyone. We don't care about backgrounds or socioeconomic status. We are here to help students who have learning differences, and we really advocate for them, not only with the implementation and use of their accommodations and classes, but we also advocate them on campus committees and with campus programs and campus initiatives. So we're also having opportunities to meet with professors who are asking us, how best can I teach this student? Because our students have given their professors permission to chat with us. And it's been a pleasant experience to sit across the table from another professor and ask questions and then be able to offer suggestions. So we're very fortunate in that respect as well. But we do have limitations. We don't force students, as I said, to show us their Canvas programs. Also, we don't provide any oversight or cleaning in students' rooms. We never go to a student's room. I actually had a mama ask me to go and knock on the door of her son to make sure he got up for class. But I had to explain to her, we don't go to our students' dorm rooms. Also, we don't go into their classrooms with them. And we don't have academic coaches who can go with them to their classes. Our students attend class on their own and they come back and meet with us in our offices. Now, we also don't, as I mentioned earlier, force them to participate in tutoring or in academic coaching or in another program we have called supplemental instruction. That is specific reteaching of material, and it is targeted toward those courses on campus which historically have been very difficult for students. We don't force it, but we sure help them make the connections and get them connected if they're interested. And we don't guarantee students academic success. We tell them that that is all dependent upon their level and degree of effort. We'll certainly help support them, but we can't guarantee it. If you ever come to BGSU campus, please come and visit. I will meet you, treat you to a cup of coffee, kind of give you a tour. We are on the first floor of Jerome Library in the Learning Commons. And the Learning Commons is that portion of the library where all campus tutoring takes place. So we provide tutoring not only at the undergraduate level, but at the graduate level as well. Our offices are not marked. So if you came down looking for the FLY program, you would not see any signage to do that because our students all have accommodations. And as you all know, once we get to college, they're the only ones who can tell others that they have accommodations. So we're just in this obscure little hall with our names by the door. And if you have any students who are interested, it's a very simple process. The first thing they have to do is be admitted into BGSU. The nice thing about our admission policy, and I cannot give you details, so I apologize for that, but they use more than one criteria for admission into the university. So once the student has been admitted to BGSU, then the first thing I always encourage them to do, and even at any university once they're admitted, is to apply for accommodations, because that process often takes several weeks. So we get them started on that right away. And then we have an online form. It's an online application for FLY. They fill that out, take a short self-assessment to give us some idea of how they rate certain executive function skills. And then they pay a $15 application fee, and that automatically generates an email to us. We know that their application has been submitted, and then one of the 3 learning specialists will contact them to do a Zoom interview. After that interview, we make our admission decision within 7 to 10 days. So that's where a bit different than the TOPS program. We have kind of a rolling application process, if you will, and a rolling admission process. So we get all of that done, and then we notify the students if they've been accepted. We have 3 decisions. Either you're just admitted with no conditions, but if we think that there might be needs you have that we can't meet, we would admit you with conditional criteria. Couldn't think of that word, I'm so sorry. And then the 3rd decision might be a denial, just where we think we don't have the resources to support the student's needs. One of the things that they have to agree to if they're admitted into the program is a 2-semester commitment. Each semester is $2,500. That can be paid for with financial aid, private pay, grants, or scholarships. And we also require that they participate in our immersive orientation. Now, our students are residential for the most part, so they come to campus about a week before their peers and they get moved in. We found that that reduces anxiety. And then we meet them with them all day for about 5 to 6 days. And during that time, we get their Word docs all set up. We get folders created. We walk them through our Canvas, our learning management system, teach them how to navigate, show them where they can find syllabi, help them understand the icons that are used in that program. We help them color code, get it all organized. We help them create and guide them through the creation of file folders so that their email is organized, help them set up rules if they want to use rules to auto file their emails. We also bring in several people from campus, several other support systems to talk to our students specifically about how they work with them. And we take them downtown for a tour around downtown BG. We print their schedules. We walk them through their schedules on campus so they know the buildings where each course is located. We teach them how to swipe for their meals, how to recharge their cards. It's just a week of fun activities and lots of team building among our students. And so we're very fortunate to be able to do that. Oftentimes, by the time the semester starts, our students happen to be the experts in the dorm without them even realizing it. And let me leave, oh, I cannot be trusted with a mouse. I am so sorry. Let me leave you with this contact information. As I said, I am just one of 3 learning specialists. The other is Ashley Gallagher and Lisa Mag. I put their email addresses up here so that you can contact them if you need to. We also have a general email inbox that we all monitor and take care of. But if you have specific questions that you think I am not able to answer, please contact Travis Brown. He is the director of the Learning Commons, and he would be willing to chat with you. And my offer stands. If you are ever on campus and you want to chat, just let me know ahead of time, and I will do my very best to make it a point to meet you on campus with you, or even if you have students who are interested. We do that throughout the week, all the time, meet with parents and students. All right. I think I'm finished. Does anyone have any questions?
Penny, I was wondering, would you give some examples of the accommodations that some of the students use there?
I absolutely will, Miss Whitney. And if you have a pencil, I would encourage you to jot these down because oftentimes they may be mentioned on an IEP or an ETR, but we are finding at the university level that there are some that are really important. The first suggestion is always extended time. Now, if your student received double time, let's say during elementary or middle school, but was cut back to time and a half in high school, still request double time. It's always easier to get that first time around than have to reapply for it. So there's extended time. We also have a frequently used accommodation for test taking in a quiet environment or limited distraction environment. Now, we do not have a test center on BGSU at this time. So what happens is students will meet with their professors and make arrangements either to take their exams in an adjacent room or to take their exams in their office. Some will even allow them to come down into the Learning Commons and take it. It isn't proctored, but some will give them that option. So make sure you have the limited environment. Preferential seating is also important because, as you know, ADHD doesn't just stop at the end of high school. So we ask specifically for preferential student or seating for students who have difficulty with focus and attention, and students who may be diagnosed with Tourette's syndrome. So I have a couple students. So we requested that they be allowed to sit in the back of the room or stand in the back of the room so their tics did not overstimulate or distract the others in the classroom. Professors are very agreeable. This also works for students who might have ambulatory challenges, might be in a wheelchair or walk with braces. We always ask that they get preferential seating. The fourth accommodation that I would recommend you ask for is frequent breaks. If your students have ADD, ADHD, or maybe another neurological condition that requires them just to get up and move, especially if muscles are spasming, such as with cerebral palsy or something like that, or with the TBI, just to allow them to get up, take frequent breaks, leave the room, walk the hall, and come back. We also have another accommodation for alternate texts. So if a professor is using only a paper book and you can't find a digital textbook, we request alternative text. So our Office of Accessibility Services will scan into a PDF, and then our students can use whichever assistive technology they feel most comfortable with for the reading of that text. So that goes right into accommodation number 6, the use of assistive technology. Now that could be communication boards, that could be certain apps for note-taking, certain recording apps. It could also mean text-to-speech, speech-to-text website that they might be allowed to use. We have seen that is awful important because some of our students can't use that software when they're on a lockdown browser. So we've had to learn how to negotiate that. That leads me to the 7th accommodation, reader. Some students need a reader to read the tests and or quizzes to them. If we have students who have a diagnosis of maybe combined or mixed expressive or receptive language disorders, we might ask for that, or central auditory processing disorder, we might ask for that with them. Likewise, we ask for scribes or the ability to use a computer as the 8th accommodation for students who might have a diagnosis of, let's say, cerebral palsy or dysgraphia. We find that if they can just use a keyboard, they're much more effective and efficient in the classroom. We also ask that they receive as the 9th accommodation, a note taker or note-taking assistance. For students who have difficulty, whether it's with motor skills or whether it's just with auditory processing, note-taking can be a real challenge. So we request students who have ever had that during high school ask for it again. And even if they didn't have it in high school, because maybe their teachers were providing their notes, we suggest they request it. You lose nothing by requesting it, right? So it gives our disability officers much more information to work with. One of the 10th accommodation that we often consider is the ability, I got to say this right. It's called absences. So we have some students who struggle with mental illness and or panic attacks. And so some mornings they just can't make it to class or afternoons. So they have a special letter that gives them permission not to be penalized for their absences. They still have to complete all their work. They aren't excused from any coursework, but they are allowed to miss. All they have to do is communicate their absence with their professor. The 11th accommodation that we use is also what we call a foreign language substitution. So students with, again, a mixed expressive or receptive language disorder, dyslexia, maybe there are other speech language diagnoses that make spoken language difficult. We apply for that waiver at BGSU, and that permits our students to not take the language portion, but actually take culture courses related to a particular language. So they might take 4 courses in German culture, 4 courses in Italian or Japanese or Chinese, or etc. So those are 11 that I can think of off the top of my head, not to mention you don't have to ask for the accommodation to use a service animal, but we do sometimes request that students be allowed to have an emotional support animal. That is an accommodation that can be granted by the Office of Accessibility Services. In our 13th one, not that it, coincidentally lines up with IDEA's categories, but our 13th one is also to request single occupancy. So we have students who are on the ASD spectrum and they just need a private room. So if they get that accommodation, then that can be presented to Residence Life and they can get their own room. Did I forget anything, Miss Whitney?
I don't think so. And I did type those and put them in the chat box. So if anyone didn't write those down, you're welcome to get in the chat box and copy and paste those on your own computer or however you want to do that. So thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Any questions for me?
I have several.
Okay.
Go ahead, Miss Amy.
Okay. Did I understand you to say at the top of your presentation that you do not accept students with intellectual disabilities? Or did I?
Well, I said that, but let me clarify it. We are not equipped for students with severe intellectual disabilities.
Okay.
Our Firelands campus is, but we don't provide any modifications to curriculum or anything like that.
Okay.
So thank you for calling me out on that, because we do have some students that have a slight impairment, but they have to be able to be pretty independent.
And they have to be able to do the course, the regular
Yes, ma'am.
coursework. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Because they're all degree seeking.
Right. Okay, because it's not that special certification that the TOPS program gives.
Correct. I think theirs is a workforce certificate, and
Okay.
we do not offer that, although the Firelands campus does.
All right.
Mhm.
And when you talked about costs, I'm assuming
Yes.
the $2,500 is just for the classes per semester. That's not the meal plan or the residential cost or anything like that.
And it's not tuition. It is just to be in the FLY program.
Oh, okay. So tuition
what-
is also on top of that. Okay.
It is.
Okay.
So that $2,500 pays for their services in the FLY program and
Okay.
meetings with us. Mhm.
Gotcha. When you said that they're under, they can only have 2, I think you used the word no shows for the tutoring or whatever it was. I'm assuming no shows are different than if they're sick and they miss. Okay, it's just
Yes,
if they
ma'am.
don't show up, just,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
Mhm. So we ask them to notify or cancel their appointments at least 2 hours in advance.
Okay.
And one of the reasons we do that is because, well, you know, the workplace, you don't just get to not show up to work and still get your paycheck, right? But not only that, our students who tutor are getting paid. And if they show up and our students don't show up, then I kind of fuss at them because that's just not respectful, right? So if they miss 2, I just had a conversation today, a young man missed 2. I asked him where his level of responsibility and commitment was. And he said, you know, Miss Penny, I really am not into it at all. And I said, okay, then you have to draft an email and respectfully ask to withdraw from your tutoring. That is the responsible thing to do. Just know that we're not going to ask for it for the rest of the semester. So for that course, you are done for the rest of the semester. And if it's in our program, we sit them down and we say, so why aren't you showing up? What is there something that's causing this? And if it's just because they don't want to do it or they oversleep, then we usually pull the parents in and we have a talk because we need to come to a decision. I've carved out time to meet with your dinky darling every week and he or she isn't showing up. So we need to address this. So,
And the single occupancy for if you ask for that as a accommodation, I'm assuming they're charged for that single occupancy. There's not they have to pay for that extra thing. Okay.
Yes, they do. And unfortunately, I don't know those figures off the top of my head, but yes, but it is an accommodation, which I think is very important for our students because I have some students who really just cannot live with anyone else.
Right.
Just too difficult. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the questions. They were good. Anyone else have a question?
I do.
Yes.
I kind of got the one. So how many courses do they take in a quarter or semester?
We are on semesters and it varies. I have worked with students who have only taken 3 semester hours, which is 1 course. I also have students in the program who are taking 17 hours. It's all based on their ability. We don't have a minimum amount of hours because we have students who are in the honors college who come to us every week and they're taking 17 to 18 hours, but we have other students who just can't manage that much. So whatever works for them. Now, because of federal funding, if they're receiving any federal funds, they have to be at least full-time, and that's 12 semester hours or 4 courses.
Okay. So if they take 3 courses or something, can they have 3 tutors or would one tutor all of it?
They will have probably 3 tutors.
Okay.
So we would get a tutor for each of those classes. And then if they needed an additional writing tutor, so let's say they have papers due in each of those courses, but their tutors are working on content, then we would hook them up with the writing tutor.
And then if it's not working out and they're just not being successful, I mean, how do you approach that with them? That it's just not going to work? And how many quarters or semesters do you let them fail or whatever? I'm not trying to be pessimistic, girls.
Oh, no, not at all. It's pretty realistic with our population, right? In the past, I'll tell you what I've done. The first semester is always rough. Our freshmen just struggle, right? So we know that it's going to be difficult, but I always look for patterns and trends. And because most of our students give me permission to chat with their families, if I see a troubling pattern or trend, we invite the parents to join our meeting. It can be FaceTime, it can be on the phone. We don't care. They can join our meetings so that they can hear how I am probing to see what's causing the difficulty. And so it's very team oriented and collaborative. So in the past, I have done it that way. And there have been a couple times where our students just couldn't make it because of, let's say, a reoccurrence of a mental illness that had not surfaced in quite some time. And if that's the case, then we put them in touch with the proper people on campus who can give them the direction they need. But for the most part, we try to talk them through it to help them build the grit they need. So if that means dropping another course, if you can't do 3, what would happen if we dropped a course and you were successful in 2? Sometimes that's the world of difference right there. They're just trying to manage too much. And once they realize the workload, then I had one student, he just graduated. He was at 3 courses for 2 years. And finally, his last year, he said, I want to try 4. And it was not pretty, but he did well and proved to himself that he could manage it. And his mom and I really coached the entire way, and he made it through and graduated and walked across that stage. So I think we do it in a real coaching and guiding way. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Good questions. This group always has good questions.
All right. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Thank you.
So much, Penny. We really appreciate you presenting. And
well, thanks for letting me come. It was great.
yeah. Could you also send your PowerPoint or any? Okay. And then I can get that out to staff. And I did receive Jessie's as well. So I'll send that out. And then Amy, I know you'll probably forward to some of the parents who are on tonight. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you all have a wonderful evening and stay warm and safe.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.